Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. It is the 15th day of 2021. As the month continues to move fast, that is, this year is already taking off. It doesn't seem like it's already been, wow, almost, well, it's actually been almost quite a month, almost a month since Christmas, and time has flown by. I think all of us are deserving or noticing that time is sped up, it seems. What I'm going to talk to you is somewhat controversial tonight. It deals with the Soviet Union and the aftermath of what took place. Most most don't want to hear it um, because it's controversial. Anders Solzhenitsyn tried to tell the whole story. 200 years together. For some reason, that book has never been released to the English audience. Hasn't. The book's never been released to the English audience at all. It's been released in the French, I know of, but not in the English. And what he was foretelling or talking about was the group of people who eventually are involved with the communist takeover in the Soviet Union. And it goes back 200 years. Solzhenitsyn researches this information and comes to the point that the Jews are involved, heavily involved. And so there are a couple of books that I have here. I want to make this clear also. The Germans, the Jews, are not the ones who actually invented concentration camps. Concentration camps were introduced to the world in the late 1800s by Winston Churchill. That's right, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, who before he became Prime Minister, was involved with the military and all kinds of affairs. You need to look into who he really was. He had some major issues with his children. That is, he was a child and never had really parents that really cared about him. And I think that's where it began. I really began to see that as where he began to go off on a tangent. And later on in his life, he's a heavy drinker, and he's a heavy. He gambles a lot, and for some reason, they keep bailing him out. I read a story about him, I guess about 3 years ago, about his Winston Churchill. And everybody swears that he's such a great man, when in reality, he's not what you think he is, you see. So back to this thing here. I want to go to Amazon here and show you something here. Share a screen with you. I'm sorry, I chose the wrong one. Okay, this is the other book I have, Behind Communism, 1917 to 2010. If you observe this particular book, that is the artwork, that is what's on the picture here, you'll notice some major. This is 3 leaders in South Africa, major leaders. Let me explain who these guys are, because 2 of them are, well, let's say 3 of them are actually important in South African history. The one on the my right would be your left is P.W. Botha. He's the last ruling, quote unquote, white South African to rule the country of South Africa. The guy in the middle is Nelson Mandela. That's right, Nelson Mandela. You notice the way they have their arms clenched like this. That is a Soviet, the Nazis are this way, and they have that type of thing. Anyway, the woman in the left, extreme left here, is his wife. So I want to explain to you that everybody glorifies these people, especially the man here, Mandela, as some great man. He's not a great man, folks, at all. His wife has enormous impact upon his life also. So, and we won't go into all that tonight because I don't. That's not what I'm here for. But I just want to show you that picture. And this is a book that was done behind Communism, and it's updated up to 2010. So it's actually already now 11 years old. The writer here, Frank L. Britton, wrote this book. It's first published in '52, but it was actually updated in 2012. You can still get this book at Amazon. It is well worth looking into. As I go back here, let me show you. I've gave you the wrong screen here. Hold on a second. I'm still messed up here. Let's go back. Now let's go back again. I'm sorry, I made a mistake. Let's do it again. Here's the photo again. As you'll see, and these are three key figures. I studied U.S. foreign policy in Southern Africa when I was in college. And I was well aware who P.W. Botha is. He's the white leader, the separatists. Many were against him. If you remember anything about the 80s, there was I think U2 was involved in concerts against him, against apartheid, as Bono would say. Bono's just part of the system, folks. He's just a fake. But anyway, I didn't know that at that time. I was a big-time U2 fan. But the point simply is he's a white racist here, South African. And then the man in the middle is Mandela. And then the woman is his wife. And I can't recall her name right off the top of my head. Let me just say a few things about what I did learn in the class that I took in foreign affairs with Southern Africa. At one time, Angola was was involved in being involved in a takeover in southwestern Africa. It's called a country called Angola, and they were trying to spread communism at that point. And there was a country called Southwest Africa, which was an annexation of Southern Africa. Today is known as Namibia, but at that time it was not a country. It was actually a territory controlled by the South Africa. South Africa and the United States were involved in war against Angola, in a covert war in some ways, although South Africa had built its own military. At one time, South Africa was a major power militarily in Africa and still is somewhat, but it's no longer involved. But the point simply was that what transponded here is that South Africans were actually fighting Angolians on the battlefield. They were not successful because the Cubans were helpful there too. As you recall, if you go back a little bit more with the situation in Nicaragua, in the middle, which is in Central America, which was another Soviet satellite that the United States was trying to do away with. It's interesting that we never deal with Cuba in some ways, but we are dealing with other countries far away. And there are people from Nicaragua who are involved, who are part of this whole situation, who are actually in Angola and giving assistance. So is the Cubans. In Angola. Angola eventually as far as I know, is no longer communist at all. That idea dropped when the Soviet Union fell apart in the late 80s, early 90s. And from then on, we don't see this as much as we have in the past. So that's just to give you an idea of what's transpired there. Just give you some idea what takes place. So Solzhenitsyn was trying to get this out. He lived in the United States. He came here in 1975. Basically, the Soviet Union wanted him gone. They didn't want him around anymore because he was becoming a threat to them also. Because his books are basically start to create issues in his own home country. and they don't want that. And that might be the reason why the Soviet Union eventually collapsed, because people, basically what I understand, this is how it works, folks, and I'm just going to make it very clear. They stop believing in the system. It's a key ingredient for you to actually change your world. That is simply is you no longer believe your government. And when you don't believe in your government, the government doesn't have any power anymore, folks. It never will. You are the power. Get that in your head. Once you don't believe in certain things about your government, the government itself will fall on itself. That's a fact, because we're who we are. You need to understand who you are as an individual, as a person, that you have more power than they do. You are the authority all the time if you choose to be awake or aware. But the point simply is that the country collapsed because they lost faith in the communist view. No longer basically in fear, but in reality come to the point simply is this is not what we want. So that's what happened. The Soviet Union fell. And when the Soviet Union fell, it collapsed the rest of the what we call the Warsaw Pact countries, which are the countries that we call Poland, Yugoslavia at that time, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Moldova, Romania, all the countries that we call Slovenia, which is part of the once was Yugoslavia, Macedonia, Albania, Poland, Belarus, and others. And so the whole thing changed. And I think it changed because this is what happened. Because, and I've talked about this also to show you how Gramsci's, who wrote prison letters in his communist, when he was in a prison cell in Italy, wrote books, and he wrote books that have enormous impact upon us now in the Western world. And those books were dealing with what we call the destruction of the United States or other European countries from their cultural ideals. That is, their centers of education and power there. It's called the long road or the long way around because simply it takes a lot longer to destroy a country this way. And militarily, it's a different aspect. That is, you can simply attack a country and try to destroy it. That is like, just completely destroy it and take over militarily. But this whole perspective is him. And Antonio Gramsci is the one who wrote these books. And these books, eventually, he didn't live that long. He only got out of prison with Mussolini. And what took place simply is he went to the Soviet Union and was given, I guess, basically support in some ways. But within a couple of years, he was gone. He was dead. But his books, somehow, whatever he wrote, got into the Frankfurt School. And there's the key. That's that tells you everything about this whole thing, about how what's happening now in our country. Because what's happening is we're destroying ourselves within. That's what's going on. We're coming apart from when it began because we have moles in our government. We have moles in the government. We have people, but also simply as people have been completely brainwashed in what they believe anymore about our country. And so they are capitulated. They've compromised, and they don't understand their freedoms. They don't understand the value of their freedoms, that they have expression of what is right or wrong. Their expression to say what I can do, or I can get in my car and go wherever I want to go. You see, now, yes, it is a form of control here. Yes, with a driver's license and a car, but there's far more freedom in that perspective than you would see in the Soviet Union. You see, in the Soviet Union simply was be far more what I call controlling you. You may not have a car, and if you do have a car, you're on the on the higher totem pole per se in the Soviet Union. So what I wanted to share with you is what is taking place after Lenin is in power, because I've done a video already about how he comes into power, because simply is the banks and the industrialists here in America are determined to bring Russia down. because of some things that happened in the past with the Abraham Lincoln. And I've done that story also. I've shared with you about that whole story. I've connected these things for you to see how this is all has taken place in history. It's a puzzle, you see. Piece by piece, these things gradually become, and then you begin to see a bigger picture, or see the picture of what really is going on. And so, so what happened here is that Solzhenitsyn tried to get this book out, and he went back to the Soviet Union. I don't know if you knew that, but he did. But that became, I say Soviet Union, I don't mean Soviet Union. That's after Russia, actually Soviet Union fell in 1989. And I think he went back in the early 1990s or so, and he left the United States to go back there. This was not his home. He made that clear. He did not like, he was living in Vermont on some property. He was a writer, an immense writer. And he did it the old way with a typewriter. He was a very detailed researcher. And I believe that this is his work, simply was the 200 years together, explaining what had taken place in Russia and what had happened, and eventually with them taking over the power positions after the Marxist takedown of the Russians, of the Tsar. And so what takes place here, he's trying to get this out. And I know he wrote the book. We know that because simply it's in a French language, but it's not been offered in English language. And you know why? Part of it has to do with the United States, but also the English language is now spoken. It is the number 1 or 2 language in the world. I think it's number 2 after the Chinese, but it is spoken, or maybe not spoken, but is actually, people can write it, because many European countries made that a second language that you were taught English. Some I met people who were from Ukraine that could write it. That is the English language, that they were Ukrainians, and they basically could not speak it because they had not been taught pronunciation. And part of the other issue simply is we go to the Chinese. The Chinese were actually I know a friend who had a son who was actually teaching the Chinese students in China English, but it was not English as they were taught, but it was more Americanized or Australianized, to the point simply is it was more, it flowed instead of actually being very connected, it didn't flow. So that was what he was doing. The boy was doing. He was a student there and getting paid to do that. And naturally, someone invited me or thought would it be a great idea for me to go there, and I says, no, I'm not interested in going to China. So, but that was in the western part of China where this boy was actually teaching at. So I've digressed a little bit here. So back to the English language, is the reason why the English language is spoken so much today is not only because of Britain and its power, but in the last 200 years, it's been a lot to do with America as an economic power and also military power that has had an influence upon the whole world. And the sad fact simply is you can go to certain parts of India, you can go to certain parts of Japan, you go to places in Singapore or to Australia, whatever you go, and it's all Americanized. It's not even what we call their own separate entity, because corporations have gone over there and pushed their products in those countries, you see. So what takes place with this particular book here? I just want to read some things here to you because I want you to understand how these people were treated. Because we just think, oh, it's just communism, such and such. First of all, this is a map I have, but it's not going to be easy to see, so I'm not going to really show you this. But the Soviet Union had what they call a compulsory labor camps. There were 53 large camps, and 425 small camps. Most of the criminals or people who were against that were against the state were sent where Solzhenitsyn went, which was in Siberia. In fact, they were put basically. I'll just tell you a story. They were shipped by railroad into Siberia. There were no buildings where they stopped. This is true. They're told to get off the train, and you build the buildings. Now, excuse me. Usually their weather is now, 20 below, 30 below. I don't know, but the conditions of work. So they had to work together. There was no buildings, folks. They had to build them. You see. So I'm sure that it had what I call axes and that type of thing and putting them together, but they had to build their own buildings in order for them to actually have a place to stay in. That's how crude and cruel it was done to them. And these were people who said a few little things like, Anderson Solzhenitsyn basically said something to do with the leadership of the Soviet Union when he was in the Western Front in Russia and the 1917, 1918 area when they eventually left that particular for the Germans to take, not take, but basically to no longer have another front to fight against. And so he wrote something derogative towards the leadership, and that got in the wrong hands. You see, this is how it works. We're getting very close to that here in the United States, too. We've got people who really want to tattletale and tell things to other people and what you're doing and what you're not doing. You see? You see how this works? How people begin to support so they can get, this is how it's going to, my thinking is simply this may happen here in the United States because people are stupid and don't want to take responsibility on their lives. And so what happens simply is they will tattletale to get food or to have power in their house. You see, so they'll tattletale and go to the government saying, you're not doing such and such, you're doing this and such, and, da. That's the same way it was in the Soviet Union. Same way in Germany, too. Although the Germans were a fascist state compared to the Soviet Union, which was more of a pure communist state. Let's see. I had a story I want to share with you here. One I want to show you here before I get to that story is this story here. Let me go back to share the screen here. This is a canal that was built, and this was all built by women, men with wheelbarrows and shovels. And I'll see if they show a photo of that or not. This is where they built it at. As you look here, as I'm showing you where the canal was built. And this canal was named after Stalin for a period. So this is from the White Sea, and they want to connect to the St. Petersburg. Okay. This is what they used. Look at this picture. And you'll notice simply these are wheelbarrows. So they're digging out here, this part here, holes for eventually the canal. They're not using any modern equipment at all, folks. This is back like going in the Stone Age. Okay, this is intended to demoralize the people, to destroy them, and eventually they would die of either starvation or disease or just simply no longer caring. The interesting statement here about this group is that there were very few guards. So people had actually were so fearful that they'd even take a chance to try to escape. Here, these are notorious people who actually did this type of thing to their own people. Let me share something to you and make it very clear, because this is how far you've divided and how far you sank as human beings. You have done this to your own people, your own human flesh. This is not an outside force. You've been taught to fight against your own selves, to kill one another based upon either propaganda or a belief system. And this has been done with man. This tells you that man himself is crazy in what he does. This is the administration building. It looks like it's growing up here. So apparently it's not kept up. And they have some statues here commemorating this great thing that took place. This is a modern picture of it, but this is not a this is not a big canal too. So, but it is. This is all was done by human hands. Let me explain something else for you to understand if you can see this. Let me show you something else that will kind of show you. This is in the 1930s. Okay. And let me explain the. I didn't get the right thing here. Sorry about this. But there are pictures basically of the United States being involved here with the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is much shorter. It took money, but they used steam shovels. They used a railroad. They had what you call train cars that were filled with dirt to move that dirt away from there. There are no one, what we would call, doing heavy labor, as you saw here in this picture. And this was 25 years before that. Let me explain. This is in the 1900s that this is being built in Panama. Now, 30 years ago, afterwards, this is what takes place in the Soviet Union. They're using wheelbarrows. They're using picks and shovels to get the dirt out. They're moving giant rocks by men, 8 or 10 men picking up rocks in order to move them, you see? And so it explains how man has become so sick and how governments have used him. That is how diabolical, in other words, how the system has been used so much to make you think you're free, and especially here in America, and you're told that there's an enemy out there and that you must go out there and kill them because they're half human. George Bush did that. His son did the same thing too. So this will give you an idea of what happens. Let me see. I have something here and I didn't mark it, so. So most of this was built by human hands. This was not anything a mechanism here at all. These were people who look at as chattel. They're just used. They're looked upon as not having a soul by those who are actually leading the government, you see. They were treated as dogs. I can't seem to find it. I had the information here. Okay, here it is. All right. This is an example how bad it was, okay? One night in July, the chief of the militia detachment, that is, together with a couple of subordinates, paid an unexpected visit to laborers. I won't tell you her name. It's a lady. Her name is Maria. And a baby was heard to cry. The room was searched thoroughly, and finally the woman was told that she was arrested and would have to be sent off. She was told she would learn more about it in the station of the detachment. So she's sent off, and they're not going to tell her anything to move on. Together with her baby, the woman was hurried away and incarcerated. The next day, it was explained to her that she was to be exiled as an enemy of the socialistic state. The reason was that her husband, now she's being punished now, who, by the way, had left her a few months previously. I mean, where's the compassion here? Let's continue. That she was an exile as an enemy of the socialist state. The reason was that her husband, who, by the way, had left her a few months previous, had failed to report for work in the factory one morning. As a result of this, his passport was canceled. And see, they had passports within the country. You see, he himself laid off, and his wife sent to Siberia. So when he failed to not report to work, they punished his wife. So she was sent to Siberia. This goes on and says, these heartbreaking examples shows that not only generals and capitalists are prosecuted in exile, but every worker, farmer, in fact, the entire population is free game for these particular Jewish rulers. In connection with these facts, I shall refer to the letter written by an engineer who returned from the Soviet Union and gives an indisputable opinion of the problem. If one goes to the jail in Leningrad during the visiting hour, one will note a long query of people standing there only to get information if their relatives in the jail are still among the living. What kind of hatred is taught in man to do this? In the majority of the cases, these people are young women, the wives of workers, or old half-starved mothers who often wait 6 or 8 hours patiently worrying over the fate of their relatives. What kind of people are you to do this? The information is always brief and harshly given by officials. In other words, it's not even done in care. It's almost as simply as they've got a job, they hate their job, they're doing it, and they don't give a damn about this person in front of them. They don't care. This is the problem also, the key word when I say they don't care. The word care is enormously important in life, folks. If you don't care about others, if you don't care about yourself, if you don't care, guess what? Bad things happen. It reveals that your heart is sick because you don't care. Just caring about somebody, an individual, a baby. It doesn't even share anything about this woman's baby. What happened to her, the baby? Nothing. Which I don't know, but I'm just going by what I'm reading here. The sentence in most cases call for compulsory work or exile. If you are tempted to ask these worried and shabby-clad people why their son, brother, or husband was arrested, you will learn that their offense in most cases was a sidestep in the party's discipline. It's a joke. the quitting of membership in some local communistic organizations, communication with relatives abroad, the fostering of religious alliances, etc. So this was a threat to the state. The investigations and preliminary hearings are long and trying, and the prisoner is successful in offering a perfect alibi is a complete wreck after his release. They just destroy this guy. Most of the prisoners, however, are sentenced to compulsory labor in the external Siberian North or to the hot and murderous deserts in the Soviet Union. In the North, they are cheaply used in stone quarries and for the construction of railroads, highways, and fortifications. This is particularly true on the peninsula of Kola, K-O-L-A. Furthermore, they are employed in industry where they perform valuable and cheap work. Cheap work. Now, this is why man, let me explain, folks, and make it very clear to you. This is why man is in his state right now, and why we continue to suffer. Because he doesn't care. He doesn't care about his neighbor. He doesn't care about his family. And those actions that is don't care is put out into the world, and it comes back. You see, and so things get get worse. If there's care, there's a feeling of something, of caring about somebody, loving somebody. Hope is there. Care is almost being disconnected or detached from people. Me and a friend were talking last night. It was a lady I spoke to. I mean, not spoke to, but actually, a lady is the deal with. What's the word I want to say? We're talking about simply how people used to do certain things. It's true. I won't keep you much longer. It's true. I can remember, and she said the same thing. We called a certain place in the house called a living room. Now, where do you think that word came from? I would say that basically that's where all the entertainment or people coming over to see you. I can remember as a child that people would come over to my parents' house and visit. Without asking or coming, not calling. Do you get it? They didn't call beforehand that they're coming. That room now, the living room, is called something else. It's had three. These are the names. As the living room displaced, it became what they call the family room, which is where the family of the kids and such did their thing. Were there. So what's happening is society is having impact upon families. This is what takes place, and so there's no longer people coming over to see others or going to see others at their house. So it's now about the family, and there's nothing wrong with that, except in the family room there's a television, and it's been that way. It's gradually, in my parents, I remember this because it's true. In the 1965, 66, when we lived in the state of North Carolina, I can tell you the whole layout of the house. The living room was in the front part of the house, and the door was to the living room, period. You came in the house. There were two doors in the house. One was to the car porch. You came in from the side, like a garage, but this was a car porch, so it wasn't enclosed. And the other door was the front door, and that front door it came right into the living room. That was the first room it came in. There was not even, at that point, was no foyer. It was just simply you came in the living room. And in that living room, there were a table. There was a table in the house where probably 6 or 8 people could sit there. There was also a couch and a few other chairs, and then there was a television. The television was actually, when you enter the door of the house, the front part, it was right there. So it wasn't the primary thing. It was just a side effect. In fact, I can remember both me and my brother, when we lived in the same room together, we would have a television, and it was a small 12-inch or 14, I don't know, it was 12-inch, I think it was, a small television, and we'd watch it. It was a black and white. And we would watch what they would call 4 channels in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I can give you the call letters and everything almost. And the channel we usually watched was channel 36 in Charlotte, WRET TV. So that give you an idea how much, just gives you an idea how much me and my brother watched television as we got older. We usually watch television, the major of the times we watch television, to give you an idea, and I'm just changing a little bit here. I didn't mean to get off tangent here, but I just want to share simply how life has changed. And we would spend time mainly on Saturday mornings for cartoons, and usually right after coming home from school for a couple hours, and that would be it. We wouldn't watch. And then I would tend to watch some football during the Sundays, pro football. But I want to share with you that that family room is no longer called the family room today. It's now called the entertainment room. So there now, usually there's no table there in the living room. Usually there's a television now, but it's a big screen television. And there's a place for people to watch TV, or there may be something else in there, maybe a computer. But the main thing is the television now. So it's interesting in the West. So I'm kind of trying, like I said, changed gears here. But my point simply is back to do this thing about the Jewish-run concentration camps. We know now that this was, again, this is a thing that came out also. Lenin is a Jew. And we also know now simply is that Stalin was half Jew. We know that Trotsky was a Jew. That's not his real name anyway. He has a Jewish name. And I can't pronounce it, but it starts with a B. B as in boy. And you have been told that simply these were Russian people who did these things, and it's not true. We know simply is here in America, as I've shared, how communists came to America. They came here after the 1848 unsuccessful coups or takeovers of the European countries that failed. It was basically a huge failure for the communists. And so they were allowed, they went to Switzerland. It's a neutral area. We need to talk about Switzerland sometime too, because that's a neutral country, but you wonder why it's neutral all the time. And they stayed there for a while, and then eventually they came to the United States. Lincoln let them in. In fact, if 1848, when I say Lincoln came in, I mean other people let him in. But this was the Germans. This is not the group that my parents came through. My parents came from on the Brandt side and the Priester side. I think are both from Hamburg, Germany. And they're in the 1820s or 1810s that came here to America, not later. It's a completely different group of people, different attitudes too. Those that came here from my family were farmers, or either they came here and that was what they were offered, and they wanted to be free. They wanted to live in another country and have their own land. The ones that came later on, it's got a completely different attitude, as though the country owed them something. They'd already been brainwashed to a point to simply say they expected the government to take care of them at that early age. I'm not joking with you folks. This has been the long road how this whole thing is going on, and how this is taking place in our lives, and it's a long march. It's a long way around institutions to destroy them within, which is what I talked about Antonio Gramsci. I need to get some of his works. I know some general things about what he talks about. This was a young man. This guy died, I think, when he was only 35 years old. He was in prison almost, not quite half his life. He was in prison for probably 10 or 12 years, I think. And he's the one that came up with the prison's notebook that he wrote, and it got into somebody else's hands, and lo and behold, that's what's been used against us since then. It's called cultural Marxism, and it's a completely different, and it's actually it's a slow march. It's a gradual. It's like the frog in the water, boiling water, but it's not boiling water at first. It gradually takes place later on, and the next thing you know, it's too late. And that's where we're at. Except it's not just the United States; it's the whole world. See, this is it. Am I wanting to be part of fear porn here? No. But I am stating the facts. So what I see is going on, and it needs to be told. I hope that never happens. But the way people are these days, they're in a stupor. They won't even know what's happened to them. And you can see it already around you. So, okay, 47 minutes is enough. We'll talk to you later. Thank you. And you have a good night.